Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are going through the BR changes for aviation and also for the Naval in this video. We're going to be focusing on aerialistic and also Naval arcade. There's a ton of changes which have come in, and if you hear some weird breathing, that's basically the dog, because he won't stop barking. So basically I've got him right next to me while I'm recording, so he can just kind of relax. The BR changes that have come in, there's a bunch of them which kind of reflect what they usually do when increasing the BR range of vehicles. They're actually pushing up aviation to 12.7, which doesn't just affect, obviously, realistic, it also affects ground realistic, so we'll have to see how that kind of comes in. The first change that they've decided to do is the SB2M100. They're pushing it down to 1.0 from 1.3. This change really won't make too much of a difference. Like, it won't really do anything to the vehicle. I suppose it means that you can run it with some lineups in ground or naval, but to be honest, it's not one that, a lot of people will kind of push towards because there are much better options. The only thing I'd say about the SB2M is straight up, it's a type of vehicle where a bunch of them were removed from the game many years ago now, 6 to 8 years ago, something like that, and it would be nice to see them back again so everybody would get access to them. Whether they're going to do that or not, we'll have to see, and it would be cool to see for everybody so many can get access to kind of hidden vehicles we've talked about before. The next set of changes starts with the J9 early, which is going up to 2.3. I haven't had too much experience in the J9 early. My guess is the guns are doing a lot for the vehicle, since it is obviously Swedish with that setup, and also maybe it just needs a bit of rebalancing, especially after, it just got added to the game. So this is probably a quick rebalance just to try and give it a little bit, or give stuff around it a bit of breathing room, but I don't see it as a kind of vehicle that would take over the game. The engine, to me, didn't seem powerful enough, but I suppose we'll see what goes on. A lot of those vehicles, especially in aerialistic, are very much more designed for dogfighting, or the ones which are meta are much more designed for dogfighting nowadays, so that's probably what has gone on, and probably what has been happening. The PE3 is going up in VR. Really never a fan of stuff like P3s or Peshkas in general going up in BR. I've talked about my issues with these types of vehicles for many years. They're jack of all trades, masters of none. They don't really do too much in the grand scheme of things. I don't really offer anything which is great in terms of usefulness. So to see it go up, I mean, sure, but I don't think it will see too much play from that. They're also putting down some bombers. So for example, the Condor, the Focke-Wulf 200C1, and also the Heinkel HE111H3 are both going down in BR, which is super surprising to me. I thought both of them were in pretty good positions. They both get pretty high altitude spawns. Don't know if there's been like a set of vehicles which really are able to, spawn at altitude to go after them. The only ones I remember were the JU-288 or the JU-188C or the JU-88C even, and they're obviously on those teams. So maybe the base bombing in them isn't going as well because of their bomb loads being a little bit janky, or maybe they're not having a great time in ground, which would make sense since the vehicles aren't, really designed for that. So just kind of odd to see that. The Duck once again goes down to 2.0, has fundamental issues, engine performance mainly, and also just the way that it is super reliant on a heavy, large caliber gun. We've found with the Key 200 and many other vehicles, these ones are just not favoured in the game because they just lose so much energy after shooting and also need air superiority. And you can't really get that anymore, especially with the spawn point changes to a lot of vehicles in ground realistic. It means it's much easier to get into planes, which makes that stuff a lot easier. The B239 is increasing in BR. Once again, kind of surprising if I'm honest. It looks like a lot of people are enjoying the Swedish tech tree, which is great. Hopefully people will continue to enjoy it as they go through, but it's not a vehicle I look at and go, yeah, this is super powerful. It's more just one which is okay at everything. So I'm kind of surprised it's going up, but, we'll have to see how it does this new BR. The DO-217N1 goes down in BR again. Another wonderful night fighter. A great vehicle, which obviously doesn't really fit once again. Night fighters are built in a way where they sacrifice certain attributes for others. And with the way that War Thunder works, those attributes are just not really used at all. Like, they're not really something which is exemplified. So for a lot of night fighters, they just lose out. They just turn out to be heavier than their standard competition, with bonuses which don't matter. And that's definitely shown in the DO-217N1, and it's why it's gone down, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times in BR over the time. The I-29 is another ridiculous Soviet prototype, very similar to stuff like the I-301, which is very powerful and also an event vehicle. So it's another one of those that people will have been using during the events to bully new players in order to get the events done. So that is why that's going up in BR. It is a very, very good vehicle and has a lot of power in its engines and also a lot of firepower too. I always felt like the energy transfer of that vehicle, the rate of energy change was wrong on it. Basically, it felt like, to me, it didn't lose enough energy over the period, but it seems like it's they haven't changed it, so I'm guessing that's what the stats say, but it just seems kind of nuts. Then we have a bunch of vehicles which are in that kind of middle ground where they're not really sure what to do in terms of their playstyle. So you got the IL-4, which is going down, very similar to like the H3 and the Focke-Wulf 200 in its playstyle, so probably falling into that same camp. But then you also have the P3 BIS, the ME410A1U4, the A20G25, and the A36. These kind of like middle vehicles, which are not, great at doing a bunch of different things. Instead, they just don't really have a defined role. The A36 is kind of the attacker that you use to go after other attackers, but everything else just doesn't have enough bomb load, or doesn't have enough guns, or doesn't have enough, maneuverability, or whatever it is. They just don't fit how the game plays. And this was something I talked about a lot when certain other vehicles start getting moving around, and these ones exemplify that idea, which, kind of sucks for them. Golovachev's Yak-9M going up. I don't really have a huge opinion on that one. I've always enjoyed all the Yak-9s I've played, but for many different reasons, since they all play very differently. The only issue I've ever had with the Yak-9s is the engines not exactly being great on them in terms of longevity. So you'd have a very powerful 5 to 10 minutes, and then you'd have to manage the engine temps and the oil temperatures and all that stuff quite aggressively, but after that, it wasn't too bad. The Mustang Mark 1A going up, once again, might be something that's being used for events or something like that, but it's one of those which is very powerful and ground realistic. If you haven't played stuff with 20mm and ground realistic, stuff like Typhoon, for example, with its 420mm, you might not realize how good that AP is against a lot of vehicles from top down, and the Mustang Mark 1A might be being used in this way. So as an air-to-air fighter, it's not great, but as something used in ground forces, it can actually work really well. Then you have 2 more ME410s going down in BR. Not a surprise at all. Like, it's just kind of how all of this stuff goes. It's something which we've talked about many times with these kind of dual engine heavy fighter things. They just don't fit in any of the areas that the game has. The Firebrand is in the same place, another vehicle that has a very specific playstyle, and anything that is not malleable will just eventually go down in BR. It just happens over and over again. But then the P51s, the D10, the D20, and the D20NA, all going down in BR, and the J26, and the P51 D5. Is this really needed? I thought they were doing well. They have good guns, they have good, maneuverability, they have a great bomb load, especially for ground, and also they're just able to kind of control the battlefield. I think these guys are once again in one of the areas which we've talked about previously, where you have a bunch of vehicles which don't fit the meta properly, like the turn fighting meta we've talked about, and that led to stuff like the P-47s going down in BR. It led to a lot of Corsairs going down in BR, and now it might just be affecting the P-51s, which sucks, because they're really good vehicles, super enjoyable to play, and very, very nice to fly around the place. We also have the B-26B going down in BR, and the DO-217E2, both going down to 4.3. This is also surprising to me. The B-26B doesn't have the greatest bomb load, but it does have quite a lot of offensive capabilities that do work really well in its favour. This might just be one of those cases that we've seen a lot where these medium bombers just don't pack enough of a punch to actually have enough of a effect on the game. So what ends up happening with them is they just kind of get discarded in favor of larger bombers with much more bigger payloads, which are played a lot more passively than these. The DO-217 though does pack a decent amount of punch though. It really is a vehicle which does have quite a large bomb load, if I remember. I believe it has 3 1000s, if I'm not mistaken, which was always actually really nice playing those vehicles. Maybe it was the K1 and the M1 which has the larger ones. No, it has 4 1000 kilo bombs, which, yeah, is a pretty decent bomb load, unless they've changed the way that bases work. So, not really sure what's going on with that one. I feel like that vehicle should be fine to go. I remember grinding through all those DO-217s along with the ME-264 and the HE-177 and having a great time. Like, it wasn't a negative period at all at the end of the day. Then the Su-6 M71F going down, another one of those vehicles which doesn't really have a defined role apart from hit ground targets and try and run away. It just needs larger bombs or just needs better cannons to be more useful in a ground realistic role. And the F4U4 going down once again in BR, unfortunately showing the major issue with the game at the moment, which is any vehicle which relies on altitude is just not favoured at all. The Corsairs are some of the most criminally under-BR'd vehicles in the game. They're so strong, so powerful, really good, and really impressive. But unfortunately, with them, they do need altitude. And altitude means that you need good setup. And if you've ever played Air Realistic recently, setup is not something that beckons on vehicles. The J2M5 going up in BR, the J2s are incredibly strong. They can fit any playstyle. They're a mainstay in the Japanese setup. The Japanese aviation tree is really fun to play. Definitely my second favourite tree in the game. And the J2s, I've never had a bad experience. To see one go up in BR, no surprise. The A6M5 Co going up once again because people cannot stop turn fighting it. Same with the Spitfires, just going up over and over and over again, and all because of the simple fact that people will not stop turn fighting them. If you actually fight them vertically instead of horizontally, what will end up happening with the A6M5 Co is it will not be able to do anything because its engine is not powerful enough. It's very, very surprising to me that this keeps going up and shows how generally a lack of skill is affecting these types of vehicles. It's super easy to defensively fly, but it's also super easy to do the opposite. Then we also have the 2s. They are going down in BR. It's not hugely surprising with these ones. The problem that the 2s have is even though they have really good bomb loads, their flight performance suffers so much if you decide to bring them. So it takes you a year to go onto your target, and you're just not able to. Like, you're not able to actually use the payload that exists. You need at least some kind of engine power behind the payload to be useful. And unfortunately, that just doesn't exist with the 2. The J2M2 also going up in BR, following its brother, the J2M5. No surprise there at all, just because of how powerful the vehicles are and how well they actually work. And that, to me, is kind of a signal of how powerful these things are. The J2M2 came into the game at I think 3.7 or something like that. And yeah, even though we've had a lot of BR decompression and all of these general things, it is just kind of interesting to see how much these vehicles are affected. The PB4Y2s are going down in BR2. Seems like people aren't having a great time with them being gunships. I thought they were once again completely fine. The way that you play bombers is super simple. You turn 90 degrees, set it in a 2 to 5 degree climb, depending on the bomber, wait 10 minutes, and then go for bases, and you will survive 90% of the time. I wish people would take this advice instead of just gunning straight for bases, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to happen. One of the really nice things actually is these stats now are actually also being based more on human players. So instead of them being based on people who are botting, which most bomber pilots in Air Realistic, it felt like they were, especially with stuff like the Ju-288, so at least it gives us more of an inkling of a true BR of many of these vehicles. The J6K1 goes up in BR because it's a fake vehicle, and because it's a fake vehicle, it has a bunch of boosted attributes to it, just like stuff like the R2Y2 have had, just like the Hurry production had when it first came out. The J6 is able to keep a lot of those attributes, meaning that it's incredibly powerful and way better than it ever would have been in real life. So seeing it go up, no surprise. It's another event vehicle that's abused by people to get the event done quickly by experienced players who have access to it since it came out such a long time ago. Then you got the F9, F5 going down in BR to 8.0. No surprise there either. It's a vehicle which has not stood the test of time. There's plenty of vehicles in War Thunder that work very well at their specific BRs. If you've ever played the Panther recently, you'll realize it isn't one of them. It doesn't fit very well. Its guns are great, but its low speed maneuverability is super nice. But over the years, what has happened is that BR bracket has been massively stoked with a bunch of very, very powerful vehicles which are ridiculously fast. Put it like this. The fact that the F9, F5 can see the F104A, it can see the F104C, it can see the Lightning F6, it can see the MiG-19. What are you supposed to do in an F9, F5 against any of those? The answer is nothing, which is why it's going down. The J29D has a similar issue, but it also has tagged on the fact that it isn't very maneuverable. It relies heavily on its engine and also its main guns, and its main guns are just not good enough for it to be that useful. It's one of those weird kind of CAS J29s that just doesn't work very well, and it's been at a BR it probably shouldn't have been at for a long time. But yeah, not too surprising. The Sagittario 2 is going up in BR because once again, people cannot stop turn fighting Sagittarios. It is a problem, and it is the same issue with the A6M5 Co. There are people who just do not know how to fight the Ariete, they do not know how to fight the Sparviero, and do not know how to fight stuff like the A6M5. Sometimes it's okay to relax. Sometimes it's okay to go for other targets and let them just mill about and basically fight themselves. A lot of people back in the day learned this with stuff like the ME163 and stuff like the Key 200. You don't have to fight them straight away. Sometimes what you can do is you can just wait and wait for them to basically run out of business while you do your other stuff. So then we have a change which I feel like has been coming for a long time. The F5E. Not just the American one, but also the Chinese one. They're moving them up to 10.7. And the basic reason why is because they're crazy powerful. They are some of the best turn fighters in the game. They can bleed pretty much anything speed super easily. They have access to countermeasures, and also their missiles, even though they only get 2 of them, are fine for doing what they need to. The guns are also fantastic too, and while grinding it out during the winter event, I just realized how dominant it is in its BR bracket because of everything being focused around it. Even at 11.3, which a lot of your matches are at because of the premiums, it works really well as well. So to see the F5E go up, not a surprise. Really isn't at all. And then after that, what we get is a bunch of different BR decompressions. So as we've talked about previously, when ABR increases, which is something what they've done here, is you get a lot of the 12.3 vehicles, which should be 12.7s, moved up, and then you get a little bit of BR decompression in some of the areas as well. So like the JH-7A going up, the Mirage 2000 CS5 going up, the J8F going up is all factors of this. And then in the next set of changes, you'll get even more of them. What I'm more interested in is actually what happens with the... Sorry. I'm actually more interested in what happens with ground than what happens with air in this sense, because I don't think the air stuff will change that much. What you'll see is just more 11.3 premiums going around the place, and everything else should basically be the same, because now 11.3 is opened up BR because they don't get to see 12.7s, so now the BR brackets will be 12.7 to 11.7, 11.3 to 10.3, stuff like that. So this will mean, even though the F5Es go up, they'll probably face still the similar stuff. What really benefits from these changes are the 11.3s. So any vehicles that are in that BR bracket will have a great time. 11.0s will also have a great time too. So it should be really cool for those vehicles which haven't been able to kind of see the light for a long time. For me, I'm really happy to see these changes. It's always nice to see BR decompression. Hopefully they continue with some more BR decompression and we can have a great time with it. For Naval, there isn't that many changes. Basically, it's 5 separate changes that are around the place, starting off with the Ubari going up in BR once again. So the Ubari is an interesting one because they put it down in BR. It's the hodgepodge machine. And I'm guessing it just did too well in a lower BR matchup against a bunch of destroyers, even though it has no armor and you can just hammer it over and over again. So it looks like it just goes up again and back to where it was before. So maybe that means that the vehicle is doing fine now, or something is going odd with it. For me, I still think it should be 4.3. It just doesn't have a defining factor, and also destroyers can just hammer it over and over again. Talking about destroyers which are going up in BR, we have the Blagorodny, Nutrashimy, and Spokojny. And you may be wondering why all these are at the same BR and also going up at the same time. It's because they have one thing in common, which is the 130mm 58 SM21s, and also the fire director that comes along with them. The Spokojny, Blagorodny, and Nutrashimy all have this setup, even though they are different machines, and this fire director they have has a calculation time of 6 seconds and an update time of 3 seconds. When you couple this with the 130mm, which have a 15 rounds per minute first stage rate ammo, with 100 rounds of ready use ammo and 12 rounds per minute of fire rate when you're not on first stage, this creates a scenario where if you even get in range of anything, you can just annihilate. It's the same reason why a lot of American destroyers have been going up in BR over the time. Not because of the massive amount of secondary, armaments on these things, or the torpedoes. It is straight up these 130mm, which are just annihilating everything. So seeing these go up again, I think it's maybe a bit too much, but it's also a sign of how a lot of cruisers right now, especially with the AP changes and how they've changed what's been going on, they really haven't been in good places. So hopefully this means that they're in a better place. Hopefully everything... Hopefully they don't just annihilate a ton of different destroyers and everything like that. But right now, in terms of the vehicles, I don't think they should go up. I know that they can do a lot, but it's going to get to a stage where they just get annihilated by 6.0s and they just get outranged and just destroyed by them. So we'll see what goes on. The Kurama is actually going down in BR. The good old Kurama is going from 6.0 to 5.7. And what it's generally doing is it's following the footsteps of the Ikoma. So I always wasn't really sure why the Kurama was 6.0 and the Ikoma was 5.7, because if you actually have a look at their standard main armaments, they're exactly the same. And even the secondary armaments, yeah, they're slightly better on the Kurama, but it's not something that makes a huge difference in terms of the vehicle and its general play. So seeing it at a higher BR never really made me feel like I would want to play it, especially since you have the Tone, the Suzuya, and also the Megami, which are all at 6.0, which are all way better than the Kurama in its general use. The only question with the Kurama is if they'll follow what they've done in the past and actually move down its rank as well, which they should do, since it now has the BR of a rank 4 vehicle. And will they? Probably not, because it's an event vehicle, but it would make sense because of the rules that they talked about 6 months ago. The changes to Naval are a little bit all over the place. The changes to aviation, a lot of them make a lot of sense. It's once again favouring turn fighter vehicles and also at the same time not favouring vehicles which don't have a desired role in the game. What I would love to see is just more roles being added which actually suit different game modes, and you could have a much better time with these kind of middle of the pack light to medium bombers instead of just specific ones which are really good. But it's been a long time and we still haven't seen that day, even after a ton of changes to these game modes to try and add in areas to help. But hopefully we see it in the future. Hopefully something happens. As always, look after yourselves. Peace be with you, and I'll see you next time.
I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.